So it's the day before Thanksgiving. I am at the Vail, Colorado airport. I've been away from home for about 2 weeks doing fundraising for Meadville Lombard, one of our UU schools. And I'm there at the airport knowing that I have a flight in 5 or 6 hours that I will be connecting to in Denver. And then I will be home that evening to Orange County and home in time for Thanksgiving. Now, as I'm being dropped off by the family that hosted me that week, they looked at the sky with a bit of alarm, this beautiful, clear blue sky, and they said, "Are you sure we should just drop you off? We might need to..." There's sound gremlins this morning, right? Should I go to the pulpit? Is that... All right, how about here? Oh, hand higher, okay. That's doing it. See, it's my fault, of course. You're amazing. There, and the host said, "Why?" Yes, but there's often issues. So I think I'll just go to the pulpit this morning. What do you think? See, I was about to tell a story about difficult travel, and then I tried to travel, and you get in trouble with these things, right? So I'm there. The host family says, you know, Vail is a little dicey when it comes to cloud issues, and sometimes planes don't take off. I look at this beautiful sky, I think, what are they talking about? It'll be fine. No, just drop me off. I'll be fine. I just want to get home for Thanksgiving. So I'm sitting there in the Vail airport, and of course the announcement comes on, due to low clouds, we will not be departing any flights this morning. So I call Lawrence, and I'm lamenting that I'm not going to be able to make my Denver flight, and I'm complaining that I won't be home for Thanksgiving, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn, and there's a young man standing there, and he says, "A bunch of us are getting an SUV and we're going to drive to Denver to meet our connecting flights. Want to come?" And I say, "Sure." So I tell Lawrence, "Look, I'm going with some strangers to Denver. I'll talk to you later." And I hear him, just as I'm hanging up, saying, "Strangers? What are you talking?" Click. So I was grateful, as you can imagine, grateful for that opportunity. And we will come back to that story in just a moment. You know, with Thanksgiving time, naturally, we do talk about gratitude. We talk about being thankful and grateful. And we know that there is, at the same time, a tension between the myth that so many of us were told about Thanksgiving when we were growing up and the reality of the story. Now, the myth that we were told was about Indians, indigenous people, and pilgrims just getting along and having this wonderful feast where they shared and cared for each other and were grateful as a result of that. We know, of course, it was a lot more complicated than that. That even though that moment did happen in 1621 with the Wampanoag people coming to be with the Pilgrims, we know it was a lot more politically complicated than that, and that it was also a meeting to try and gain some diplomacy between their situations. And it was the indigenous people who brought most of the food because the Pilgrims did not know how to farm the land and get the food that they needed. So they were dependent upon the kindness of these strangers coming and being with them. So that piece is true. But of course, the myth Thanksgiving story does not take into account the genocide of the indigenous people. It does not take into account the violence of colonialism and the continued echoes and repercussions we see in our world today, right down to what we're seeing in immigration courts. For some indigenous people, this is a time known as the National Day of Mourning rather than Thanksgiving. So this morning we honor all the complexity of this holiday, and at the same time we're pulling that gratitude piece forward and really taking that into our hearts and appreciating it. So back to that SUV. We're sailing along under that beautiful blue sky. Now 6 people who are together on this journey. We're singing campfire songs. We're introducing ourselves to one another. There's a banker. There's a school teacher. There are 2 people who tell me that they were baggage handlers the summer before at the United Terminal in Denver so that they could earn money to go to China for this big trip they'd done recently. So they told me they knew exactly where to drop me off to catch my plane and exactly how to get through security and what hallway to go down and so on. Because my plane's the first one, but it's 6 hours away. It's supposed to be a 3-hour drive. We're going to be fine. I am going to make that plane. So there we are, and they ask me what I do for a living. And I say, well, take your guess. And they say, well, musician, because I'm wearing all black, apparently. And I finally told them I'm a minister, which they thought was highly amusing. And, and this whole thing started to sound like a joke. A banker, a baggage handler, a minister walked into an SUV. The thing is, all of a sudden, we stop. And traffic does not move. Sky still blue. And 30 minutes passes, an hour passes. Ultimately, 2 hours pass, and we're just sitting there. My phone, by the way, at this point has died completely, of course. And we're sitting there, and we decide we're hungry, and so we start to pool our resources. We have a bottle of water, which we pass around and take sips of. We have 2 protein bars, power bars, that we divide up into thirds. And from that recent trip to China, there's a bunch of ginger chews at the bottom of somebody's suitcase, so we pull those out and share them. I look in the rearview mirror, because I'm sitting way in the back, and the driver meets my eyes, and he says, "Don't worry, we'll get you there." From strangers to neighbors. Just like the Thanksgiving story, which is really a story of Indigenous generosity, of people being neighborly. And it's no surprise that's part of the Native American philosophy and tradition, religion, if you will. Neighborliness is at the core of so many religious traditions. Judaism reminds us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Buddhism talks about compassion and kindness, equanimity. Islam says you must take care of your neighbor. Christianity, who doesn't know the parable of the Good Samaritan? Being a neighbor to one another, giving, and then engendering generosity in one another. It is at the core of what it means to be human, at least according to so many religious traditions. Father Daniel Homan writes, "If we do not find and practice ways of hospitality, we will grow increasingly hostile." If we're not hospitable, we will become hostile. Connection's actually what makes the world a safer place. Being in relationship with one another makes us feel more secure, more at home, safer. And that's sorely needed in our world today, where we have so much potential for connection through all these digital means and otherwise, but we're missing that real, true relational neighborliness that is so, so important to making us feel like we are at home in our own world. And the thing about gratitude is gratitude comes from giving, and then we feel grateful, and then we are inspired to give, And then those folks feel grateful, and they're inspired to give. And it's this wonderful cycle. But when people aren't giving, then people aren't feeling grateful. And then they're not giving, and then there's no gratitude, and that cycle stops. And that's why it's so important that we honor gratitude as a core value of what it means to be human. So, back to that SUV. We finally reached the Eisenhower Tunnel, that big tunnel through the Colorado mountains, and we're moving along finally at last, going from that blue sky, and we come out the other side, and it's like going through the back of the wardrobe in Narnia. It is snow like you've never seen before. Just a complete whiteout. But the roads are moving at this point after 2 hours delay there. My flight is getting closer and closer time-wise. How can we possibly make it? But the driver assures me, he says, we are going to do our best to get you there. But of course we have to stop. We have to stop for gas, and I have no cash, and it's some mountainside gas station that doesn't take credit cards. So again, I am at the mercy of these strangers who have so far fed me and sheltered me and driven me through the snow, and now I can't even pay them for gas. So I say, please give me your addresses and contact information so I can send you a check. No, that's not necessary. No, at the very least, I say, we need to keep in touch. I need to thank you. So, of course, my phone is dead. So they take a piece of paper out, and they all write their contact information on that piece of paper, and I carefully stuff it down in my bag. The thing about that situation was those folks had made my problem their problem. And that is something that helps us all to remember how connected we are. That value of interdependence, which is so crucial to our particular faith, but is also crucial for the world to function in a healthy way. These folks took me in when I really had nothing at that moment. This week as you were coming in, you probably saw all those purple flags out there. If you didn't, we need to talk about your noticing skills here. Amazing amount of purple flags. And this is because it is Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. And when we think about generosity, we think about giving, and we think about that whole dynamic, it's important for us to pay attention to this particular week. I was looking at the figures that the folks who organized this put out, and I actually had to sit with them for a moment. 37 million, over 37 million Americans live below the poverty line. 37 million. I don't know about you, but I can't, numbers reach a certain point, I can't visualize them after that. And that's one of those numbers that's greater than anything I can imagine. It means 1 in 6 children in the United States are living below the poverty line right now. And that so many people are struggling from day to day to make ends meet. At a congregation I served previously, we were located in a downtown area, and there was an overhang in front of the front door, and people who were unhoused would often sleep in that area. When if I had an early morning meeting or I just happened to get to the building early, there would sometimes be a dozen people camped out in that area with their dogs and their stuff. This little community that had bandied together. Over time, I got to know people's names. I had to, I was trying to get to the front door, and they're sleeping right in front of it. And so we started to build relationships. Some of them even told me their stories. I remember one man who talked about the fact that just a few months before, he had been in his own apartment. And he said that his full-time job had become a part-time job because they didn't want to give him benefits. He said his rent went up, his health went down, medical bills went up, cost of food went up. And he said it was so stressful, even though he could make ends meet for a while, it was so stressful and anxiety-producing that he actually felt less stress now, being homeless. What kind of system, broken system, do we have in this country when that is preferable to what we would consider a normal life of having shelter and food and all those things available to you? I appreciated this man's candor. He helped me to understand some of the challenges that people are facing and how difficult, even when people look like they're getting by, how much they're holding on their shoulders and in their hearts. And of course, you can't help but be grateful for what you have when someone tells you a story like that. But I don't think it's real gratitude if you just walk away and you feel like, well, I'm so grateful I've got mine. That's not gratitude. Real gratitude is a call to action. It's a recognition that, yes, you have things you're grateful for, but you want this person to have those things too. Real gratitude is wanting to extend the cycle of gratitude, not have it stop with you because you got yours. And that's what this week is about, having some awareness of hunger and homelessness and being called to action, called out of that place of gratitude and giving. So finally, at last, the Denver airport comes into sight. We pull up at the door that this couple have strategized will get me to my gate. At this point, they're boarding, there's no doubt about it. But maybe, just maybe, I can get there. So I open the door and I start trying to profusely thank them, and they're, go, just run as fast as you can, go, okay, I'll go. So as I'm walking into the airport, I realize that in my bag I have 75 ballpoint pens that I brought along for this fundraiser. And when I had been flying out to Denver before, that had caused a problem in security because people don't travel with 75 ballpoint pens in their bag. There must be something up with that. So I think I can't go through security with these pens in my bag. So I open the bag and I pull the pens out and throw them in the garbage can. And as I do, that slip of paper with their names on it blows off into the autumn wind. I have no idea who those people were. I don't know their names. I will never see them again. I'm sure that we wouldn't recognize each other. But what a moment we shared. So there I am in the airport going as fast as I can, and I do get through security, and I get to the gate, and as I walk up to the gate, run up to the gate, actually out of breath, covered in sweat, the flight attendant shuts the door. But, and I want you to take this realistically, because Thanksgiving miracles are probably rather rare. And I feel like I used all my karma that day, but somehow the universe had left a tiny little bit in the form of the grace of this flight attendant who saw my face and heard the story that started to pour out of my mouth, and she opened the door. That will never happen again. Last seat on the flight, middle seat, I didn't care. And ladies and gentlemen and all, I got home not just on time, but 14 minutes early for Thanksgiving. The Thanksgiving story is a story of strangers connecting, giving, receiving generosity amidst a larger, complex world, sometimes brutally complex. Sometimes we are brought together in circumstances that we have not anticipated. We have to move through challenges, move through snowstorms and tunnels and all kinds of obstacles to find our way. But my goodness, are we able to make that journey better when we are together, even when we hardly know each other. And the other thing I remember about that Thanksgiving is that I'm sure I had a lovely meal the next day, but I don't remember that meal. The one I remember was that 1/6 of a power bar, the sip of water from the shared bottle, and a few ginger chews. For meals like that, and for all they tell us about humanity, let each and every one of us be truly grateful.